Hello there and welcome back to the studio today. So in today's episode we have a 12 by 12 inch MDF board panel that I gessoed previously, and I layered it with a thin coat of water mixable raw umber, and I toned it overnight. So this is going to be kind of an experimental surface painting. So here's an image of the painting that will be created in today's episode. Yes, it will be a hand study. It's been a long time since I've painted a hand study. And before we get too far into today's episode, I'm going to take this away. And so before we get too far along again, this is my self-portrait that I painted a long time ago. I'm going to keep this short, okay? So I'm going to be having another 48-hour sale. So this painting, I will insert a better image of it now. So this painting will be on sale for 48 hours following the day this YouTube video was uploaded. So within the first 48-hour time period of the upload of today's episode, this painting will be on sale at 40% off on my Etsy account. I will have a link to my Etsy account in the description box down below. Just click the little arrow down below and just scroll down and you will see the link to my Etsy site. Now back to the original YouTube video. Here is an image of the original hand, so to speak. It is taken from a Bouguereau oiled painting. I did take the image from the Google Arts and Culture website, so if you want to find the same image, you can easily find it by looking it up. I won't be linking it in the description box down below, just because, you know, YouTube and demonetization and all that stuff. So we're using water mixable oil paints, and if you want to know exactly what materials I'm using, they will be typed up in the description box down below. As my drawing medium, I am using the Winsor Artisan thinner. Most of these oil paints are the Winsor and Newton Artisan, with maybe one or two colors that are Holbein, but mainly Winsor and Newton. So now with the drawing, you have to consider mainly the gesture of the hand. It doesn't have to be set in stone. And again, I'm kind of experimenting with the surface here, so this is going to be kind of an interesting way of adapting to a new surface. So I'm just putting in a simple little line here, an axis marks. So let's look at the knuckles of the hand. And I'm only going to be focusing on this one hand. And I'm going to try to draw or paint the hand closer to the right of the screen so that you can see the photo reference over there, a little bit more of a larger image of the photo reference. So here's the bottom of the fingers, corner of the hand. So if you notice, I tend to go for the axes of the hand, the general direction that the hand is moving in. Now I'm going to start to put in another little axis mark here for the wrist bone. So I look for the wrist bone. Okay, you have radius ulna going all the way over here, and then you have a little bit of overlap over here. Now materials wise, I know that water mixable oil paints can be kind of baffling, especially if you've only have experience with traditional oils. I have been practicing and experimenting a lot with this medium. This is the first time I pre-toned it with just a thin application of raw umber and water. So raw umber and water overnight, it dried pretty nicely, pretty similar to odorless mineral spirits and your traditional oil paints. But don't get it confused, I didn't use the mineral spirits with this. So now that we have the basic gesture, now we can start to do the block-in, okay? So the important thing in terms of the block-in is going to be very similar to that of, portrait painting. So a head and shoulders kind of painting. It is important to look for these big dynamic shapes, and you don't have to rush it, you don't have to move so quickly. Notice how I'm kind of slowing down with my marks. Just using simple straight lines and angles. Now in terms of the materials, I am using the, like I said, the Winsor Newton Artisan Thinner. I have it on the bottom here off camera, so I'm just going to hold it up for a second so you can see it. I have it in a little container, and that is my drawing medium. So there's the corner of one finger there. The other finger goes all the way down here. Okay, so I'm trying to group together all of the fingers into one simple basic shape. And then from that basic shape, I will then subdivide. I'm more or less just looking for the contour right now. Now Bouguereau, the artist that painted this initially, the original, Bouguereau I think is probably one of the world's best painters to look at in terms of creating master studies. Again, this is a master study. It is a learning experience with a oil painting or drawing or what have you as the end result. It's a learning exercise, okay? And I really do encourage you to draw or paint along with me. Or you can be working on your own painting and just have me on and playing in the background, just rambling in the background. Okay. Alright, so now that I have a very simple little shape blocked in over here, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the dark mass down here. So I think I need a little bit more shape for the fingers over here. Okay. And so with the block in, if you're going to be doing the umber sketch approach like what this is, try to focus on mainly the poster image, meaning just like what you're seeing here, just light and dark. But don't overwork it either. Each shape should consist of just a few simple straight lines and angles, and then from there you will be able to subdivide those straight lines and angles to even more exacting shapes later on with color. Now again, in terms of the handling of the color, I really do think that this is working very similar to traditional oil paints, and that's what I've been experimenting with over the past couple weeks, is trying to figure out how to assimilate the experience of painting with traditional oil paints with water mixables. Though I haven't really been posting much about it. This is, I think, the second video. Ever since I went, I changed my schedule. The second video in the new schedule to feature water mixable. And again, I'm just thinning it out ever so slightly. And the reason I'm using the artisan thinner versus just water is, I have a feeling that the the artisan thinner, it acts a little more similarly to odorless mineral spirits for a drawing brush, and since you don't need too much of it, in the initial umber sketch, I think it's a great medium to label as your drawing medium. Then of course you can switch mediums later. So here's the corner of the wrist. So I want to look at the rhythms of the bones, the bony structure. So, by rhythm I mean, I kind of already indicated it with this axis mark. So the corner of the side of the elbow here, oh my gosh, really. The corner of the side of the wrist is over here, okay? And then the other peak of the curve, so by peak I mean like literally peak of the curve. The other peak of the curve is somewhere up here, okay? And that's just something, a rhythm that you see in nature, whether you're doing a figure drawing of a person from head to toes, you're going to see lots of rhythms, meaning going down, up, and then maybe up over here, and then down over here, just all kinds of rhythms. But anyway, to stick with the topic of the painting, now I'm going to put this brush off to the side, and I'm going to switch to a bristle brush, this size 4 bristle brush. We're going to use a little bit of the mixing white, yellow ochre, Naples yellow, and again the materials are listed for you in the description box down below. No medium. And notice how I didn't even indicate the individual fingers. I'm looking for the big overall picture. I could have indicated the fingers, but I'm going to use the tone of the canvas to help me out a little bit. Okay, so there's a little bit more of a light plane over here, the corner of the hand. A little bit more burnt sienna. So we can drop down in value and make the shape a little bit warmer. So with the hands, very similarly to the portrait, when you're painting a face, I tend to mention the main triangle. You know, like the two eyes and the nose form the main triangle. With hands, I tend to think of the wrist right here to the thumb, to the knuckles, as kind of like my main basic shape. And I try to fit all the other shapes accordingly to that shape. So now, of course, we're going to look for a light plane for the other knuckle. A little bit of the sap green. So these flesh tones are a little bit cooler. And I did take this photo reference from the Google Arts and Culture site. So in theory, this should be the best quality photo reference that we're using. Now that I'm looking at my screen, I'm going to turn off the autofocus. I hope that the camera wasn't struggling with focus, but in any case, I turned off the autofocus. A little bit more of the mixing white. So the reason I have the two whites, okay, just like with traditional oil paints, this would stand in place for the flake white, but for us this is mixing white, meaning I can use more of it without raising the value too much, therefore I can have a thicker consistency of paint. It's really just for the consistency of the paint. And again, if you really want to get more into the water mixable oil paints, I highly suggest, even though it's not the most popular brand, the one that I'm using for the majority of these colors is the Winsor & Newton Artisan. It is probably the cheapest of the lot, but I think you can get really, really nice results with it if you take your time to learn it. So for instance, like in this first, pass of color, I'm not using any medium, any extra medium whatsoever. All I had before was just a drawing medium. And it's not really glaring so much. Remember on Saturday's video, I was complaining a lot about the glare, and I was using the same medium. That was the first time I used the Artisan Thinner as my drawing medium, and I was afraid that maybe that was creating the glare. So to kind of experiment, today's episode is on a very smooth surface, an MDF panel, and it's not glaring so much, so I think it was the surface. A little more light there for the wrist. Just throwing a little bit of light for the pinky. See, now we can you know, start to put in brush strokes for individual fingers without having to perfectly outline the fingers. We will be able to build more specificity onto these fingers as we go. Now, even though the photo reference makes it look rather cool, I'm going to stick on the safe side and use a warmer mixture. These days I really do love burnt sienna. I added it even to my traditional oil paint palette whenever I'm working in the studio. A little more Naples yellow. Of course, we're going to pick out a plane here that's brighter, some more Naples yellow, and let's use titanium white. See how just a little of it raises the value so much? So it's good for when you want to switch gears to have a much lighter shape. Okay, so now we're just going to spread more of that color up here. So, as I would mention in my previous videos about water mixables, that kind of gooiness to it, how oil paint is kind of like, it feels kind of like melted butter, and the water mixable has kind of a gooiness. It's not completely the same as traditional oil paints, but I will say, you know, when you use little to no medium, especially in the first pass, such as this one of color, it feels nearly identical. Now, if I were using a lot of water in this, it would be okay. It's just that it would start to kind of sink into the panel, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just handles really differently to traditional oils. Again, I have a video titled Just Water, something like that, with water mixables. But I recommend this approach more recently, I think. Okay, alright, so now we're going to get a little bit of a darker greenish tone. So burnt sienna mixed with the Naples yellow. As we move down, the color value web. Gonna get much more of a darker shape as we approach the bottom of the fingers. Now, if I were ever to say there was a secret to anything in painting, you know, I don't like to think about keeping secrets or anything in painting. But with hands, there is a little bit of something I've noticed within many artists. As you can see it here with Bouguereau, there's very little detail in the fingers, and I'm talking about the points of the fingers where the fingernails are. Minimal detail, and the edges are very, very soft. And that's something obtained, that is obtained when an artist works. I think it's obtained this way. I think it's when an artist works from life, because when you're observing a model there in real life, in real time, you know, you're thinking about the timer, you're thinking about, you know, the model themselves, are they comfortable, and all of these things. And I just think that in nature, when we're actually, you know, working from life, I think that we just don't see that much in the fingernails. And same goes with nostrils and things like that, eyelashes. It's very easy to emphasize it a lot when you're working from strictly from photo reference. So anyway, that's just my tip. Try to minimize the fingernails and all of the detail in the fingers. And just think more about large structure. And give yourself time to get it wrong. It's natural, okay? But also know that it doesn't have to be 100%, okay? As long as you understand some basic human anatomy, you know how we have the wrist, radius, ulna connecting over here, all of the mumbo jumbo stuff that's going on, and then the bones, as you can imagine here, the phalanges going all the way towards here and turning. As long as you know a little bit about anatomy, you should be fine. The rest really just comes with practice, especially when it comes to hands. And I tend to push the warmth around the knuckles, so a little bit more cadmium red, mixing white. So around here, you know, if you zoom in really closely to my studio work, my studio paintings, I paint a lot of hands in my studio paintings. So this is something I just tend to do. It's not like I don't see that in the photo reference, though I'm sure Bouguereau exaggerated the warmth around the knuckles in some way or another. Maybe not as much as I would. So like I said, this is a master study, not a master copy. And now we can start to put in more information. See that plane that I just put in? See how it's kind of making everything start to fit in together? Those are kind of the magical moments that happen in a painting where things just start to fit. And that happens by keeping your shapes simple. Simple and easy. So now I'm going to sit back. So if you're drawing or painting along with me, we're just a little bit below the 25-minute mark. So if you're drawing or painting along with me, every time that I stand back or sit back, it's an open invitation for you to stand back or sit back. So a little bit more of a light plane on the knuckles. A little bit more sap green. I'm going to sit back. And I sit back again. Now I'm going to switch to the half-tone brush. And another thing that I tend to emphasize in terms of the hue is the warmth around the knuckles, like here, knuckles. So this is what I mean. I don't really see it again in the bureau, but I'm going to paint it in anyway. So this is kind of how I start to subdivide the planes for the individual knuckles. And I'm a little bit systematic, I think, when it comes to hands. Admittingly, I just don't like spending a long time on hands. Although I do have one studio painting. I literally spent almost all my studio time yesterday working on the hands. And in particular, one hand had a really difficult pose, like the angle of the hand was very difficult. So I ended up having to abstract the shapes even more. So if you're struggling with a particular pose, you know, if the hands are like webbed or something like that, by webbed, I mean like locked in like this. Try to look at it in terms of shape and in terms of abstract shape. Sometimes you don't even have to know what it is you're looking at, as long as you simplify it. And then, of course, eventually count the number of fingers. I mean, I admittedly messed up with the number of fingers before, so wouldn't be the first time. Okay, so yeah, I tend to do that. I'll add a little bit more warmth around there, and then again on the near the fingernails, there's another knuckle over here, and things are going to get really soft as we approach the bottom of the fingers. Really soft. So now I'm going to make them even darker. So I'm going to add a little bit of the sap green. Probably was too much. So I'll combat that with the burnt sienna. Whoops. So I'm going to get the light brush. Fix this little mistake here. Gonna push that shape downwards a little bit more. The more you learn to reason with the shapes, you know, think about the shapes. You know, I'm thinking of this as just kind of a long rectangle that's angling downwards and getting softer down here. The more you can abstract things, the more abstract you can make it, the more real it will become for you. Or the more real, I guess, the painting will look. I don't know. It just helps to abstract. Gotta keep the edges soft. Now I'm going to switch to the light brush. Make it a little warmer. The cadmium red. So here we have the side plane, turns down, and now we have another side plane. little more Naples yellow, mixing white. Now I'm going to switch back to the darker brush, a little bit more orangey, so burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Now I'm going to switch back to the light brush, a little bit more sap green, mixing white. I'll switch back to the drawing brush. A little bit more artisan thinner. Now drawing color, raw umber. And based on the amount or lack thereof glare that I'm seeing here, that is, the paint's not reflecting too much, I can say that I can suppose now that the glare that we were seeing last time on Saturday's video was mainly due to that canvas texture. So I'll see if when I use that kind of canvas again, I'll try to gesso it a little bit more and maybe sand it or something to make it less glaring. But this is almost perfect. I mean, it's almost not glaring at all, which is entrancing. I love that. Okay, all right, so I'm going to switch back to the light brush, and even though I can't really see it, again, another area that I would push the warmth, okay, and this is particularly important when you're working with color. If this was an underpainting, it wouldn't matter as much, but the joint here for the thumb, like, see if I can point here, yep, there, that joint, I would just push it a little warmer, okay. Now let's see if I can locate it. So it's over here. A little bit more of the alizarin. And it's okay if we lose a little bit of the contour. The contour is usually kind of back and forth. You see how it was more loose before, and now I just came back in a little bit earlier and started putting more specific shapes. I don't know why I put more warmth there. I didn't really need it, so I'm gonna push even more towards here. There we go, for the knuckle. Now then I'm gonna sit back. Okay, so now we're gonna make it a little bit cooler with the Naples yellow and sap green. Side plane. Now I'm going to look for a smaller brush. Where's my brush? Okay, let's just use this one. I think that shape needs to be a little bit cooler, a little more sap. I don't know who said this, but I once heard something of a quote about oops, bumping into your camera, about hands, about how the hands are almost like another portrait, like head and shoulders type portrait. You can really tell a lot about someone if you paint or draw their hands. So now we're starting to put some of the highlights. The smaller brush. Whoops, should be a little warmer. Gonna sit back. Now I'm gonna switch to the larger brush yet again. And adjusting that plane. Now I'm going to go back in with the contour. Very cautious with this shape. Now, usually with oil paints, the saying usually goes with, in terms of medium, a little bit goes a long way, and with water mixable, that's like tripled or quadrupled. You want very little medium with water mixable. I'm only using it here in the corners to thin out the paint. Okay. Alright, so now I need to look at the outside shape of the hand over here. It's glaring a little bit over here, but that's acceptable. I did use a little more artisan thinner, maybe like 2 drops worth. Not very much. Okay, so I'm going to sit back again. So we're almost there, but I do think I can push some more of the light, but though I'm going to be very cautious. I feel like the screen, the way I'm doing this is I have an iPad to the corner, like off camera. I perceive a little bit too much contrast in the light. I don't know if it's the way that the painting is documented, but I'm going to be a little bit cautious not to make it too light. Let's switch to the halftone brush. Make it a little bit cooler. For the radius and ulna. Light brush again, just a little bit darker and cooler. Okay, alright, so I'm going to stand back again. Okay, we're very nearly there. I think that we want something for the fingernails. Notice with Bouguereau, it's extremely subtle. So let's just take right from a pre-existing value from the palette. Fingernail, single brush stroke, okay? And then just a little bit of color there. No more than that. And again, repeat with another finger, light over here for the fingernail. There. No more than that. And maybe that. But very, very little, okay? Now then, with the same brush, I'm just going to take some of the paint off. And I'm just doing this on the camera so you can see. I would normally just use paper towel to do this, but whatever. Just using the palette. And do this again. Okay. So maybe just a little bit more for the fingernail. Barely anything. Barely anything. Remember, we're not trying to give her a manicure. Is that what it is? Manicure or pedicure? I don't even know. The one where you dress up your fingernails? Yeah, I probably sound really dumb to those of you that know about fingernails. I think it's manicure. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we're not trying to give her a manicure. You know, we're trying to put in the most basic information for the fingernails to read in space. Later on, when it dries, if you really want to put nail polish and stuff like that, I would suggest to do that when it's dry. And I would glaze if you would want to do that. Just glaze. But this isn't really the video on how to, you know, color fingernails. You know, I think that one already has enough of suggestion of the fingernails. Now, of course, the webbing of the fingers. Now, this is another danger zone I would watch out with if you are interested in painting very naturalistic hands. It just doesn't look right if there's too much delineation between the fingers. So I added a little bit of the thinner to this smaller brush, and I'm going to show you how I would approach this. So raw umber, alizarin, a little bit of sap. Okay, so I would look for first the webbings over here. It's a thinner application of paint. Okay, stand back. Okay, after standing back, I now have a softening brush. Just going to drag this down a little bit. Just enough so the edge remains soft, it remains delineated in the most important area, which would be here. Now repeat the process. Again, I'm going to put the dark shape over here. Now after doing that, I see that there could be a little more light there, so I'm going to switch to the, if I can find it, the middle tone brush, the larger one. Okay, so we're going to push back. Okay, so very easily there we're pushing back. Okay, so now we have this delineation. I'm gonna soften this while I still have this color. And this one seems already to be delineated for us, so just going to push the paint around here a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and stand back. Okay, so I don't know if this is a glare. I'm looking at the screen. So with the same brush, I'm just going to move the paint this way. I think it is a glare. Okay, so I'm moving the paint kind of horizontally or still at an angle to try to minimize the glare. Okay, alright, so now with the softening brush, I'm going to soften all through here. I'll stand back. Okay, so now I'm going to get the background brush yet again, add a little bit more nuance to the shape. Always think about the gesture of the hand. Bouguereau definitely chose this pose. This was no accident. Bouguereau, of course, worked with tons and tons of pencil sketches, charcoal sketches, or just sketches in general before he would figure out which pose he wants the hand to be in. So that's no coincidence. The pinky is raised a little bit, the hand is turned at an angle, this finger is pointed up, this one's more straight, this one is point it inwards a little bit more. It's no mistake. So when you're posing your models from life, or you're posing your models for photo references, always think about the movement or the pose of the hands. So now just softening a little bit. I'm going to stand back. Okay, alright, so after standing back, I just want to make this little shape here a little bit softer. Okay, and now with the thumb, I'm going to adjust this shape a little bit more, round it a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna stand back. All right, soften a little bit more. I think we're about there. Last thing to talk about is just edge. So with hand, it's a little more difficult to say, to be honest. I like to emphasize the palms. So here, well, you can't see the palm, but above, over here, I emphasize over here, okay? Whether the hand is facing you or not. I emphasize here, and I soften over here. So meaning I sharpen here, soften here, sharpen here, see that? Soften here. And occasionally I'll break a rule, I'll sharpen here to bring more focus to this pinky that's coming towards us, and less focus on the hands over here. And then all of this I would keep much softer. This admittingly is too sharp, so I would want to come back in. With a synthetic brush and just soften a little bit. Looks like I'm going to need a color, an intermediate color, to soften that edge. But I mean, this is like final touches stuff. So again, going to get this softening brush. It's always that last little corner, that last little edge. It's like when you're working on something, like a car or motorcycle or something. There's always that last bolt. Same thing with painting. It's always that last something. In this case, it's this edge. The edges that you want to remain kind of in between soft and sharp are, I think, probably the more difficult ones to paint, like this one. I want it to be soft and sharp at the same time, so kind of middle sharpness. Okay. Alright, I think that's pretty good. That being said, I really hope that today's episode helps you out. I know it's been a long time since I painted a demonstration for you solely of a hand, so I hope that this one helps you out. Again, I wish you the best in all of your artwork. If you would like to support this channel even more, I have a Patreon account. Again, if you are interested in purchasing the same type of materials that I am using, again, those are given to you in the description box down below. Amazon affiliate links. If you do decide to purchase any of the materials that I use, Amazon will pay me a small amount in advance, so thank you so much if you do that. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next episode. And I almost always forget something. Always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity among all of us. I wish you the best in all of your artwork again, and I'll see you again on the next episode.